Hello guys, my name is Lucas and welcome to a new episode of our RPG development series. Today we're going to keep working on the inventory. We're going to be specifically working on the dragging of the items. So we're going to learn how to drag this all the way to another slot. And this is what we did from the last episode. We set up the inventory canvas and now we're actually going to give it more functionality. If you remember from last episode, I told you to make an icon for each empty slot. We're going to change that. We want every slot to be just empty and it's going to be a parent of the item that is going to be held by the slot. So go ahead and delete the icon from any of these slot prefabs and then apply it so all the prefabs get their icon removed, and just go again and make a new UI image, and this time we're going to call it item instead of icon. So go ahead and rename it to item and find the image of the item that you would like to use. I'm going to use the sword this time. So here in the item that we have inside our slot, I'm going to create a new component called item, and I'm going to create an add. And this item, we're not going to use it in this video. We're not going to do code inside it in this video, but we're going to use it from another class. And it's a class that we're going to create here in the inventory. We want to add a new component called inventory controller. Inventory controller. So I'm just going to create an add. And here's where we're going to set our drag and drop items function. Before we go inside the scripts, I want to change one more thing, which is in my slot prefab, I want to change the tag from untagged to slot. So let's go and create a new tag, add tag, and add a new tag, slot, and we save it. And this is going to be useful for us later to identify the slots. So that's the changes we have to make in the scene, and now we can go inside and actually do some coding. So let's go first to the inventory controller. So I'm going to drag it here. And the inventory controller class is already using some classes from Unity and from C#, but now we also want to add a few more. And the first one is UI. So it's Unity Engine.UI, because we're going to be using something called GraphicRaycaster. And the next one is using Unity Engine. It's also from Unity Engine and it's called EventSystems, because we will have some properties from the EventSystem class. So this is going to be useful. So now I'm going to go top bottom. I'm going to start by making some variables. So my first variable is going to be a graphic raycaster. Basically, it's like a raycast that we usually use in physics, but this time it's going to use a UI element from our UI. I'm going to call this graphic raycaster. I'm also going to do an what is it called? Pointer event data, PED. So I want to make a pointer event data, and you'll see me making long names. Like I would simply type the whole name. I don't like doing abbreviations anymore, and that's something I learned in the actually just last couple months, and that I learned it by working in a company with more people. Because actually having abbreviations can make things very confusing for everyone in the team. Lastly, I'm going to make a list. A list of what? A list of raycast results. And I'm going to call it raycast results. And this is actually going to contain the results of the raycasts that we get from our graphic raycaster. And you'll see how it works in a couple minutes. And now on start, I'm going to assign these variables to something. So first graphics raycaster, and maybe you have seen GraphicRaycaster before and you didn't know what it is, or maybe you know and I'm just talking too much, but GraphicRaycaster, we have one here in our canvas. So you can see GraphicRaycaster. This is what is going to help us determine if we're clicking on our item or not. So GraphicRaycaster equals GameObject.find canvas, and then we have to get component GraphicRaycaster, and there we go. So now we have our GraphicRaycaster. Now we have to set the pointer event data, and we're just going to set it to a new pointer event data, and we give it a null parameter like that. And finally the list, so raycast result here is equals to a new list of type raycast result. And there we go. We're done initializing our variables. So before we continue, I want to tell you exactly what we want to do. We want to make a function that when we click, it will see if we're clicking on an item or not. And if it's an item, we're going to tell that item to follow our mouse. So it's going to follow the mouse. And when we release the click, we're going to check if I'm clicking on top of a slot. And if it's an available slot, we're going to drop the item inside. That's what we want to do. So for doing that, we are going to make a new function called drag and drop, or drag items, or whatever you want to call it. Actually, just find a suitable name for your game. Drag items, I'm going to call it, and we're going to call drag items here in our update. As I said, we're going to click on something and check if it's an item. So we need to check for input mouse button down 0. And I know I've said before that I like having my input related stuff in my input manager, but because I want to teach about this today, I'm just going to hold everything in this class just to make things more clear. But if you want, or maybe in the future, we're going to merge all this input related stuff into the input manager as well. If input.get mouse button down, we're going to first of all set our pointer event data. And how we're going to set it is actually quite simple. We're just going to set its position. So pointer event data dot position equals input dot mouse position. Now that we have a pointer event data, and why do we need this pointer event data? Is because our raycast function is going to need it. So GraphicRaycaster, this one here, dot raycast will need that. So GraphicRaycaster.raycast, and inside we're going to place our pointer event data, and we also need to give it a result list. So raycast result, and what this is going to do is going to raycast, and if it gets any result, it's going to get a list of results, and whatever those results are going to be added into this raycast result list. And you will see how it works in a minute. And now I'm going to go for, oh yes, an if statement. So if this raycast result got any result inside, so if raycast result dot count is greater than 0, that means we actually raycasted something. I'm going to do a for each variable result in raycast results. We're going to print the name of the whatever we raycasted, result.gameObject.name. So we can go and try it actually. And if I press here, you will see I get the background. And if I press on the slot, I get background, slot, background. I get background twice. That's slot prefab 17. If I click on the item, I get background, item, background. Okay, let me collapse this. Stuff is getting repeated, and the reason that why there is more and more results every time. Even if I click here, you see so many things get increased. It's because this result list is not getting cleared. So when we actually do the raycast, we're adding and adding and adding more results. So the raycast list, so the list is actually just getting bigger and bigger. It's not getting clear. So how we can fix this is just quite simple. We just raycast results dot clear, and there you go. Raycast results dot clear will just show the raycast that we're hitting each time and not caching everything. So if I click on background, you see background. And if I click on here, the slot prefab 15 only appears once. And if I click here, it didn't appear again. So now we're actually getting the correct result. So item, we're actually getting it. Now we can continue to the next step, which is checking if we're clicking on an item or not. So I'm not going to print the names anymore. I'm just going to check if raycast results 0 dot gameObject dot getComponent item. So if we can actually get an item from the first raycast result, we are going to know that we're clicking on an item. So I'm going to do that there, and I want to get this item and set it to a reference. So let's make a new variable here, gameObject dragged, I'm going to call it drag item or selected item or drag object or whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to set it here. So dragged item equals raycast results 0 dot gameObject. So there you go. We set the drag item here to be dragged. So how can we actually drag this? If you remember from one of our latest episodes, we made a function that let us place some floating UI in a world position, so it can follow our player or whatever. Now we're going to make a very similar function that I already did, and it's pretty much the same. So you can just copy your old function, this one here, world to canvas point, just copy it and just change few things. So for example, I changed the name to, we can call it screen to canvas point, and here in the parameter we can just give it a screen position, and then here vector2, instead of a vector3, this is our old function, instead of a vector3 we're going to do a vector2, and I'm going to call it viewpoint, and is basically the same, but instead of using world to viewpoint, you're going to use screen to viewpoint and use the screen position, and then the rest is the same. So just save it, save your UI manager, and go back to inventory controller. So what we want to do here is that first we're going to check if the drag item is not null. So if drag item not equals null, we're going to drag the item around. So we're going to give it a position to follow. So drag item dot get component. Remember that this is UI, so we need to get the rect transform dot local position equals to UI manager dot instance, because we're going to use the function inside this UI manager called screen to canvas point, and the screen to canvas point is going to use our input dot mouse position as the reference point. Sorry, not the reference point, but as the parameter. So there we go. And now if we go to Unity and try this, here item, and I click on it, I am actually dragging it, and you can see it here. I'm dragging my sword around. And why it's not actually following my mouse is not because we wrote a wrong function, but it's because our reference point is wrong, is offset. Right now the sort is following us in the local position. The parent of the item is actually the slot, and the slot will have its own position and its own size. So there is something very simple that we can do to prevent this. So I'm going to go back to my code, and here when I set the drag item to that game object, I'm going to set the parent to null. So drag item dot transform dot set parent null. Not null, sorry, we cannot set it to null, because then it's not going to be relative to the canvas. We want to make it relative to the canvas. It's because our UI manager is using the canvas for our function. So we're going to get the UI manager dot instance dot canvas, and this is going to give us the correct reference point for us to move the item around. So if we go and try it again, click here, and there you go. Now the item is actually following our mouse correctly. But now I don't have I already released my click. I'm not clicking anymore, but the sort is still following me. So we need to keep adding more stuff here in our code. So now we want to make a new if statement here. If input dot get mouse button up, because now we want to end our drag. So end dragging. We need to simply make this become false. So the dragged item needs to become null. So dragged item equals null. And now the item should stop following us when we release the mouse button. Just a quick test. I drag, I release, and it stays there. But we don't want to leave our items floating around, so we're going to check if we're actually dropping our item into a valid slot. So what we're going to do is the following. We're going to set the pointer event data again, because now we're in a new position, right? So we want to set the position of the pointer event data to the mouse position. So I just copy from up there, and also we want to raycast again, because we want to see what is under our mouse at this moment when we release the mouse button. So I'm going to copy and paste this as well. But if I just put my raycast on top of the raycast result, I haven't cleared my results yet. So we have to clear the results one more time before we do that. So here, raycast results.clear before we can actually raycast. So now we can actually raycast. And after we raycast, we're going to get a new list of results. So I'm going to, again, if raycast results.count is greater than 0, because I don't want to get any null reference exceptions, I'm going to get the raycast result. Maybe this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through each result, and if we have one result that has the tag slot, we're going to stop there, and we're going to set it as the parent of our drag item. So oh, and the drag item now, we're going to bring it back down here to the last line of our if statement body. So here I'm going to do a for each loop for each variable result in raycast results. For each of these variables, we're going to do an if result.gameObject.compare tag. We're going to compare the tag to slot, and compare tag is faster than actually it's doing actually comparing string to string. So use this function if you want to increase your performance. We're going to make this if statement here. So if this is true, if we found a slot, we're going to set the parent of the drag item. So drag item.transform.set parent, and we're going to set it to the result, like this, result.gameObject.transform. And then we're going to break. And what break's going to do is going to finish this for each loop, because we already found a slot. So break. So now, if you see here, my item is inside this slot prefab. If I click on my sort, you see that if I click on my sort, you see that the item goes to the bottom of the canvas in the hierarchy, down there. I don't know if you see it over here. So now if I release it somewhere, for example, back in its slot, well, it doesn't work. And I think it's because we haven't changed the tag. We created a new tag, but we didn't set it to the slot prefabs. So let's go to slot prefab here, and change the tag to slot. And all these tags should have changed. Yeah, they all change. So if we try it again, sorry guys, I always make silly mistakes. We can grab it. It went down there, and now if I put it, for example, in the last slot, it's going to be here in the slot prefab. So it's working. Yeah, it's actually working. So now we grab it and we can put it wherever we want. But the thing is that you see it's a little bit offset. I could put it right in the corner and it's going to look a little bit weird. So what we have to do, and our last step for this video, is actually resetting the position of our item. So here, after we set the parent to the slot that we found, we want to do drag item equals vector3.0, and this is going to reset the position to the origin of the parent. So let's try this one more time, and there we go. Yes, it's snapping to the middle. So now we're actually placing the sword wherever we want, and that's it. We did it. Yeah, congratulations guys. So now we did it, and we can drag, yeah, have a sword. Does this sword look like his sword? It doesn't. Yeah, we need new assets. New assets will be needed soon. We need to change the UI because our UI is actually very ugly. We're going to improve it, and I'm going to share those graphics to you guys. I'm going to ask my designer friend to do it for us. And yeah, this is going great. Before I did another inventory series, but I took a totally different approach. I like this approach much more because we're actually using the Raycaster, the GraphicRaycaster and the EventSystem. So I think this is much more clean. We did what we did in a lot of episodes. We did it in just one script here. So I recommend you guys to use this. I will recommend this inventory to you guys, and you should recommend it to your friends too. And please remember to like this video as well. And in the next video, we're going to have different items, and we're going to swap items across. So if I drop it here and I found there was an item, I'm going to take that item and put it back into my original slot. Also, if I place this, let's say, in an invalid position, the item should go back to where it came from. So I cannot place my items anywhere on the screen. And that's going to be in the next video. So right now I need to hurry because I'm going to be late for work. And as always, really, I appreciate you guys watching my videos. Please subscribe, please like it, and thank again for all of you who support me. I will see you next time. Goodbye. Peace.